Good evening, everybody. Oh, yeah.
Speaker suggestions.
Yeah, speaker suggestions. Good evening, everybody. I'm shocked that there's so many of you tonight after a big snowstorm. It was supposed to paralyze the city, and I figured 3 people would show up. So we've got about 36. Looks like we've got the snow. It's all slush. Up in Snoqualmie, I have like 2 inches of snow still there, so Snoqualmie's probably paralyzed. But thanks for being here. My name is John Bonk, Manager of Corporate Intellect here at the lab at KNEV, and this is going to be Ustreamed. By the way, this is going out live, so for those of you on Ustream, I'll tell David to stand up here and only here. So David, if you move around, you're going to be out of frame unless you're in here.
I'm going to be out of frame.
So I'm going to ink your feet. Out there in Ustream, I'll be monitoring the chat, so if you want to ask a question, I'll be monitoring that. But as of right now, we're live. This will be the second Ustream experiment we've tried. The first one went pretty well, so we're going to continue with that. As for QASIG, a nonprofit organization sponsored by KNEV, and this is our going into our 8th year. And once every other month, as most of you know, send me ideas for speakers. I've already got our March speaker booked, Adam Uret from Volunteer Match, talking about why it's a good idea not to file bugs. I love what he's going to say. It's a really context-driven thing. He's overwhelmed with bugs where he's working, and it's just really interesting his approach. So that's coming up in March. May we may have a speaker from Amazon about cloud computing. Anyway, I'm still looking for speakers for the rest of the year. It'd be great to have it all fleshed out. Tonight is David Socha with perhaps a few students to interject some things along the way. David approached me sometime in June, had an idea for his first major class on testing at UW Bothell. This is his story, and I don't want to let him tell it. I could tell a couple things about it, but I actually don't know what he's going to say. So it's as interesting to me as it might be for you. So without further ado, David Socha from UW Bothell.
Thank you. As John said, this is anyway, start at the beginning. By the way, Joe Larson is one of my students. He's here. Thank you. There are a few other students who I also talked to about this. After the course finished, I talked to Farzana, Aryan, Joe, and Belinda, and got some feedback from them. We did a little retrospective, and then I went through the slides with some of them again to get some of the content. So thank you for all of that. And thank you for all the speakers. There were 6 people who came into this course. Next time, if we do it again, maybe even more. It was very influential for the students. So I'm going to tell this story. I'm going to tell this story about how this happened, what happened, and what it means to me, what it means to the students, what it means to the people who came in and presented. And see if this works. Okay, I came to this place in a roundabout way, so I thought it'd be good to give you the context of who I am. So I started off in Wisconsin on a farm that looked very much like this, lots of cornfields around. And I went to the University of Wisconsin. I assumed I was going to go into psychology. I really think people are very interesting. But I fell into this position where I was a research assistant in the Galapagos Islands on land iguanas for a year. So after that, well, of course, I'm going to be a zoologist. Did that. When I was done with zoology, I thought, well, of course, I'm going to go to graduate school and be a computer science student. So I came here to the computer science and engineering department and did a PhD here. Took some breaks, got bored occasionally, traveled around the world, found my wife. That was great. Left that. Never wanted to see a computer again in my life. Well, that is a joke, because I've been using computers ever since. Worked at a variety of companies around here, British Antarctic Survey, working with biologists, working that with this. Looking Glass Studio, leading some Nintendo 64 development, a couple of teams doing that. And we were all new to it, that was exciting. Went to a company called Rational, where I met some people like Jeff McKenna, who were very much in the Agile camp, and it was just emerging back there. So the Agile Manifesto, Ended up getting some nice training from Jerry Weinberg. That's been very influential in my life. That's probably that is probably the most influential thing in my entire career, is the stuff that I got from Jerry Weinberg. Unbelievably good stuff for me. Went to a company called Active Voice, and there are actually some people here who I used to work with. It's so cool! And they were then bought by Cisco. I got seduced into this beautiful company where a friend of mine was having a fantastic time until 2 days before I arrived, at which point his boss was fired, and his boss's boss were fired, and the whole company no longer had any technical leadership in it. And it's just started to be. And so both of us were ejected a few months later, and we landed in Irvington at the University of Washington. A professor we both knew was running this large microsimulation project, and I stayed there for a number of years, being a software engineer, managing the project. And oh, by the way, around here I decided I would be better off if I was managing people. I really like people. I know the technical stuff, but I really like people. I also taught some courses here using the stuff from Jerry Weinberg. It was quite different. And apparently that's actually stuck. I talked to the TA who was with me for 3 years, and they have taught it that way ever since. So that's cool. And then that ended, so I went to a startup called Depiction, which was really fun. I ran out of money about 1.5 years ago, at which point I thought, what do I want to do? And I had 3 things I wanted to do. And I'm astonished that I did all 3. I wanted to work with the Green Foundation for 8 years. I managed to do that for a few months. They're great people, they do great work, and it's not the right place for me. Great, no more pining after that. I wanted to be a Scrum Master, an Agile coach, and just have one hat on for once. And so I actually got into Solutions IQ, working at T-Mobile. Fantastic, I really, really enjoyed that. And the last one I wanted, where I went for, let's see if this works, is University of Washington Bothell. So in the course of 1 year, I got all 3 jobs in sequence. And it was sort of sad to leave there, but this is a place that there's so many people who know me who have said, you should be doing that. And I finally thought, well, maybe they're right. And maybe I should try and do it. And I really enjoyed it. So there you go. That's where I came from. Not the straightforward path. And then the question is, so I find out in March that I now have a job at the University of Washington Bothell, doing this assistant professor thing, tenure track, research, teaching, all that stuff. And the question is, in April, what course do you want to teach? And all I could think of is, I have no clue. I'm in the middle of a new job here at T-Mobile, and so I just said, well, let's see, how about software testing? I mean, I know a lot of software testers. I come to these things. I think it's an important thing, the testing mentality, the approach, the different tools and mental tools that you can take and use. There's a lack of software testing courses in the area and in general. We have some really good people here, many of whom I brought in, and there are more who I did not connect with. So, sounds good, except I'm not a tester, and I've never had the role of a tester. So, I don't quite know why I did this. It's not really a sane thing to do, but it is what I did. So given that I have that, this is clearly an experiment. I'm not a tester. I don't really know the domain well. I like hanging around with these people. I like the distinctions. And some of it went well. Some of it went very well. Some of it could have gone better. And a question that I dealt with over the last few months is, would I want to do this again? So, who are the stakeholders here? Oh, this looks much better on my computer. The colors don't look very good on this one. Okay, here's the course in the middle, and there's 4 types of stakeholders here. There's myself. I need, for my enjoyment in life, I shift people's stories of what's possible. That's what I tried to do when I was at Active Voice. Brought in extreme programming, brought in agile stuff. That's what I've done for many, many years. I also actually need to do research if I want to survive at this university, so I need to find some research paths. Students want to get a job, or if they're in a job, they want to be better at that job. Those are strong drivers. They also want to get good grades, perhaps toward getting a job. There are other drivers as well, but these are some of them. The industry people, well, we need great software development, and some of what we do is great, and there's a lot of room for improvement. We all know this. We need better testing, I claim. So there's certainly things there. At Bothell, there's a couple things. One is, if I teach a course and it's just about how to use a tool, that's just like a community college course. That's not valued. It needs to be more than that. It needs them to get into how do you do problem solving? How do you think? What are the different approaches? How does it apply to something more than just this thing? And there's also this thing called circle of success, which I actually didn't know at the time. I found this out afterwards, but it fit in exactly how I was thinking. So let me go into that. So this guy named Wayne Clow, he used to be at, and I should have animated this, but here it is. He used to be at Virginia Polytechnical Institute. He was the dean of engineering there. And every quarter he would, or in the autumn, he'd come in front of the new students and new engineering students and say, there are 4 things for success in your domain, in your life as an engineer. You need to learn how to write, you need to learn how to speak, you need to be the sociability and how to work with groups and people, and you need the technical stuff. He then came to Bothell for a year as a chancellor, and he told people at Bothell, you guys got it. At Virginia Tech, I would tell them this, and then that'd be the last thing they ever heard about this, because the professors there all cared about this. At Bothell, this is it's very strong focus. We're teaching them how to write. They have to write a lot. There's a lot of emphasis on speaking. There's a lot of emphasis on working on groups and teams. And they also do this. So that was another criteria in the stakeholder system, is making sure that I fulfill those needs in the system I'm involved with. Okay, so I'm going to teach this course. It's crazy. I'm not a tester, but I'm going to teach this course. So what type of testing should I do? That's my goal. I want to shift their perspectives. So, test-driven development. Well, that's a natural. I've been doing this extreme programming stuff and the agile stuff like that. To me, this is test-driven design, and that's designing, not testing. It's part of what you should do as a programmer. It's not part of what a tester should do. That's my view. How about white box? Well, that's still inside the programming. That's similar to what they're doing already. It's a small step. How about black box? Well, that's better, because now they can't get into the code and start playing with it. They have to think about the system. Okay, that's outside of their normal box. That's good. How about exploratory? Wow, that's juicy. There's this thing called epistemology. Oh, that'll throw them. Critical thinking and problem solving? Well, that's definitely what this is about. You can use it in any domain. And it's certainly a different way of thinking than much of what I expected them to have seen in the past. So, given that, I chose 2 books, Lessons Learned and The Testing Computer Software. This was very interesting because I looked at this and said, it's so old for a technology book. But, you know, they made it really well. These are the lessons learned. And this one still has a lot of great stuff in it, and it seems to be the Bible. And they're redoing it, but they don't have it done yet, so I had to use the older version. But still, good. I thought these actually went well together. Okay, so given that we're doing this, the question is, how does it fit with their stakeholders? Okay. Well, let's see. Does it shift students' value or thinking? Yeah. Probably do that. Does it do research? I don't know. Getting a better job, being better at a job? Probably, in any domain. You can think about businesses testing, right? Everything. Ask John Bach, everything's tested. In industry, does it help in software development? Yes, because even if they stay in programming and they never become testers, there's a new way to think about the system they're building. They'll build better systems. If you want to be a tester, it's certainly a good way to think about testing. The faculty, yes, it's certainly more in the community. Well, it could be. But there's certainly conceptual stuff in there. This stuff raises it above just using the tool. It fits these types of things because a lot of this stuff is about sociability, a lot of it is how to communicate with people, so that seems to be a good fit. And there are a couple things that didn't quite do, perhaps. Okay, so, planning the course. I don't tend to do planning things by myself. When I did the software engineering course, I actually had Brian Bronigan and Jim Bullock and a couple other people, John Bach, and somebody else in there, I think. This time, for some reason, I invited just John. So, thank you, John. And he came over to my house, and this is our deck. Brand new deck. My wife says you're supposed to invite a brand new deck here. And we laid out all the stuff and got some various weights out here because it's slightly breezy and things were floating around. And we focused really on some of the content, how to chop it up, how to orient things, what the type of structure could be, and this is what we came up with. So there's 10 weeks in this, it says 12. There's actually 10 weeks that span over that. There's some holidays and stuff, and it starts in the middle of one week and ends in the middle. But so the first thing I want to do is I want to do journaling. I've done this in every course that I teach, and I have my journal right here. I noticed when I was some years ago that the people who I really respect tend to keep these things, almost all of them. And they write in here about whatever they care about writing in here. And sometimes there's diagrams. This one I've showed to probably 40 people in the last 3 months. There may be things you cut out and paste in here. There can be, this is John Boxwell's squiggle diagram from Calculation he gave. And so I want people to practice using this thing. I think it's great for being a reflective practitioner. And I don't want to look at it because I want them to write about what's important. And if that means that the guy in front of the classroom is so irritating, then that, I think, is what they should write about. So they can try the tool and see if it's a good tool with them. So every day for the first 5 minutes of the class, we write in the journal. And I never ask to look into it. Yep, sorry. And then reflective essay. This is a jump to the meta level. Be reflective. Again, this reflective practitioner. So the idea was every couple of weeks, give some essay and have them reflect upon what they've read and connect it to some other thing. Portfolio, this is a tool both for reflection. So the idea here is define approximately here when they sort of have some clue what this thing called software testing is. Define something, some concept that they're going to wrap their portfolio. This is an art collection and there's 5 things on the wall here. Okay? And then create one artifact, have 3 artifacts in total, and have 5 artifacts in total. And there's a lot of research that actually portfolios are good for that metacognition part, and they also are really good for jobs. There are certain people who want to see portfolios, and you can be intentional and say, here is what I am, and show it to people. Testing reports, this is my assertion again, and I'd love to know what you people think about this, that it's really important to communicate what you find. And testing report is sort of a general phrase for that. It could be in different guises. And so have something where every couple of weeks they get some assignment to test something and then write a report on that and see how good they can be on that. Also, in order to get more individual assessment and also in order to allow them to explore more than what I was going to cover, every student chose a research area from somewhere in software testing, and then they wrote a paper on that, and every 3 weeks or so, 2 weeks, they would then get together with a couple of the students and get some feedback on where they're at and some other suggestions and things like that. And then at the end, they would give 4-minute lightning talks on this. Okay. So we got the speaking part, we got the writing part in here several times, we got the metacognitive part in there, yeah. And feel, if you have questions, by the way, just please stop and ask them. So I also wanted to use the same software in the test for all students so they could have conversations with each other, so they could compare things. Use group work all the way through, and I really wanted to read things and then use them. And some of these things I didn't do so well. This group work all the way through, I did not form groups the way I wanted at the beginning, and I have changed the way I teach them there. I will do that from now on. And this did not go as well as I'd like. Okay, let's see if this works. So, how does this fit? I think I actually already talked about it. It fits in the stakeholder system pretty well. Doesn't necessarily reflect the GPA or the research. Okay? So, course structure. In my view, a class is a complex system. Software is a complex system. Testing software is a complex system. I'm talking about complex adaptive systems where it's hard to predict where they're going to go. You can't really know where it's going to go. You have to probe. And so in those type of situations, the question is, what's an effective leadership? I'm the leader there. I'm the person in the front. I have to create this environment which success. And here's how I think of it. leadership here is to create an environment where the students can try things and fail, little safe fail experiments, and learn from that. And so that was one of my goals, and I think I did okay on that. Partly because I didn't do the groups and some other things that we'll get into. More on the safety first thing. So how do you get safety in this classroom? This classroom is so awkward because you get grades. And grades can be such an impediment to learning. They're feedback, but they can really stress people out, and people start gaming toward the grading rubric instead of actually trying to learn. It's a big problem. So I tried to get the feedback early and often. You saw those cycles in the structure in many different ways. This is something that evolved in the course. It's like, more emphasis on the grades early or later than on the early grades. So they're just beginning to practice, and then they should know more about what they're doing. So give them more weight to the later artifacts. This is something I had read so much about the importance of doing this, and then I didn't do it. Oh man, this was hard for me. I was floundering at times in this course, trying to figure out how to make sense of this, because I never taught this before, and I'd never been tested before, and it's like, wait a minute, I think I want to go this way, it's not working, and the students aren't quite getting what I thought, and I'm having to change the plans, and this is apparently just completely typical of teaching in the course according to all the professors I've talked to. But I found myself in the same thing, perhaps more so than normal, because I'm not a tester. And there's the clear grading rubrics. I thought I had clear grading rubrics, and then the students made it very clear that they were not clear. So I kept on evolving those things. And that was confusing for everyone involved. Something that I've heard since then, has anybody read this, The Art of the Possibility? So these people, this person, when he teaches, he says, I will give you an A on the following condition. At the end of 2 weeks, you write me a letter dated the last day of the course, saying, Dear Professor Sosha, I deserve an A because of the following. And then you list out all the things that you have done at the end of the course to get an A. And he claims that removes all the grade stress, and that people actually learn a lot more. Now, I've just heard about this last week. Intriguing. Probably a bit radical. It's curious, but I'm curious about that. So here are the students. 23 students in the class. 30% women versus about 16% in the program. This is the Computing and Software Systems program that I'm in. We couldn't call it computer science because that was owned by the Seattle campus, but it's computer science with a more practical bent in some sense. So 30% women, twice the proportion of women than in other classes. That's intriguing, not sure what that means. Mostly seniors, a few juniors, all majors, many of them working. And this is the course they thought they were signing up for. It was an elective. There were no prerequisites, so they didn't have to do any programming. I found that out in the first week or so. I was like, oh, really? Oh, okay. And it was sold as a seminar. I found that out last week.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay. So they were sold a course which was, hey, let's come discuss things, let's talk about things, get speakers in there, it's going to be lightweight, we'll see some new ideas. I didn't know that. I structured this as a course with work. So now I'm going to go into a bunch of slides, each telling a little different part of this story. So the first day, I remember this so well. 3:56 p.m., Wednesday, October 6th. I'm at home. I'm preparing for class. I get this phone call. Mike Stiver, program chair, or program head chair. David, do you know classes start today? I said, yes, I know. But my class is Tuesday, Thursday. He said, no, it's not. I said, yes, it is. No, it's not. No! My class was Monday, Wednesday. I knew it was Tuesday, Thursday. I'm in Ballard. They're in Bothell. This is 24 minutes after the course has started. It's a 2-hour course.
It's right about when we were all leaving the classrooms.
It's a 2-hour course, which is great. You can do stuff in 2 hours. That's nice. I'd like to have 3, but 2 is great. But even if I get in my car right away, it's going to be an hour before I get it. There's no point. But oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed. Oh my goodness. So, what happened here? Well, here is a screenshot from the course thing that I looked at the previous week to make sure I was going in the right room. UW1060. Now, if you look to the left a little bit, you see this MW thing. That is not a TH thing at all, is it? It's an MW thing. It was right there, and I didn't see it. I was completely blind to this. So I'm thinking, how can I recover from my embarrassment? I'm thinking, oh, hi, I remember this guy, John Medino, came in here, and he talked about brain rules in this QASIG thing a couple, 2-3 years ago. And he talked about, the perception with this wonderful little video. If you haven't seen it, don't ask anybody about it. Just go see it. Don't get any information about it. But it's about how we're blind to things. We focus on that, and we don't see that. So, as a tester, this is going to happen, as anybody, but especially as a tester, you're going to be so blind to so much in there. And that's part of how we're made, humans. So what do? Well, one thing is you have a team. If I had people who were also looking at this, then they might have said, David, it's starting tomorrow. No, it's on Thursday. It's tomorrow. Let's take a look. So use your people in your organization. That was my recovery, trying to save some face. Did it save any face?
I think it worked. Really, honestly, no one's too upset when we miss a class. So. It's sort of a gift.
A gift as well. Okay, thank you. So what's the next thing here? Okay, so the second day of class, the first day of class, really. I start out with, I had them write about what is software testing, and I asked them, please don't open the books, just write a short paragraph about what you think software testing is. So I could get a setting, so they could get a setting. And the goal was to then go back on the last day and then ask them, okay, now where do you think you are? And then we had this Socratic discussion. Okay, what is software testing? Well, what is software? What is testing? And the wonderful things that came out of here is one, epistemology. That word came out, and it took them aback. Yes.
When you say a Socratic discussion, what do you mean by Socratic discussion? Because there are two divergent lines of things that describe the Socratic dialogue.
Ignore the phrase of Socratic discussion. What I did is I posed a question, and then we had a discussion back and forth, diving down. Why is this software? What is software? Is that really software? Is something else software? Which leads to the next thing. Well, software is in hardware, right? So you don't actually interact with software, you interact with hardware. It's used by a person, it's not really used by the hardware. Well, some of it is, but a lot of it is by people. So that just got bigger. And it's really about experience, it's not about the person. So testing just got a whole lot harder. That's the type of thing I was talking about. And another thing that came out of here, and this blue font like this is a quote from some student, is they went home invigorated thinking this course would be fun. So,
Sometimes I don't have to do much work.
That's what I thought. I thought this was going so well, and about 3 weeks later I was... The software under test, I chose two. There is this triangle thing that John Bach uses for interviews. It's deceptively simple, and it's got all these nice little bugs all over the place. It's a great teaching tool. It's not a product that you probably ship or people would pay for. And then there's a company I've been involved with called Aspiration, and so I knew them, and I wanted to get an experience where they're actually working with the team, working with the people who are building the code, having that interaction as much as I could. I couldn't figure out a way to make that really rich. And so this is much more complicated. It's a commercial product. There's these people working on it, and we even had a defect tracking system ready that the students could work with. So when the student said, I learned from testing the triangle program.
That. Yeah. Ignore the is.
Ignore the is.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's a direct quote. I didn't edit it. So that although some applications can appear simple, testing them can be time-consuming. They thought it was so simple, and then they discovered what was going on. And I can't see what's coming up next, but I think this is... We'll get back to it. This one, it's much more complex. The depiction software is much more complex and harder to test, but I liked that it was a hands-on program that people were actually using. Another aspect that made testing depiction interesting is getting feedback directly from the developers of depiction. They were creating bugs and they were getting questions back from the developers and they're having an interaction there. And They could even watch the status change to fixed. And then we get a new downloaded depiction and it would be fixed. So there were some good aspects about this.
Maybe.
There was some complicated. Some things I learned here. LL is lessons learned. The range of complexity was good. It's good to have the simpler and the more complex. The students needed more basics than I thought they were actually getting. I had to scale back and replan and get back to some more fundamental things like, okay, let's create some bug reports. And so next time, if I do this again, I want to have more of a progression, more of a ramp in complexity. I mean, it's the obvious thing in hindsight. It's probably may have been obvious to all of you. It's one of the things I learned. Okay, another thing that came out, we dealing with conflict. We did this essay by Brett Petticore about testers and developers think differently. And this was a great essay. It really reframed, and Joe's nodding his head, so I'm taking that as an affirmation. It reframed for the students that, oh my goodness, I am not a tester, I'm a developer. Or, oh my goodness, I'm really more like a tester than a developer. And there are these different poles on the spectrum, these many spectrums. And so I asked them to read this and then say, where do you fit? And about a third of the class actually said, I think I'm actually more like a tester. A bunch of them, most of them, everyone pretty much said, I'm in the middle somewhere. So that was very good. One of the things that came out of the essays is that most of the students didn't like conflict development. And I thought, ooh, if they're going to test and they don't like conflict, So we had a couple classes missed because of the snow. So I had to cram a bunch of things into this one class. And I created this exercise. I used to do Aikido for about 10 years. And so I had them pair up. And then I had them, would you like to demonstrate? All right, sure. Okay, let's see, we have to get the camera. Can the camera, let's see, the camera can probably see it like this. Okay.
Yep, you're both in frame.
And I had to go like that. Step when you're boom. Yeah. Okay, so the idea is feel that. Okay? And some of them got it and some of them don't, as with these exercises. And then, so one person do it 3 times, and the other person will go like that. Do 3 times. Okay, that's fine. Now, so do the strike. Now, before they strike or as they strike, breathe deeply. And so I have them do like this. And just feel that. Because that's one thing you can do to reduce stress. Breathe deeply. Breathe, and that's Aikido. You breathe the conflict in. Another thing is, as they strike, ground in the earth. Your feet are going down to the earth, they're going down, they're circling the entire earth. This is a metaphor, but it's also reality because every single atom of the earth is pulling on my atoms. There's that thing called gravity. So ground yourself on that and then have the strike. And then the last one was this thing called 16 Seconds of Joy, which I learned from this amazing and strange woman. And it has been really influential in my life, is find some place, some event or something that gives you great joy. Okay. And then when you get it, close your eyes or whatever and think about it for 16 seconds and then go into the place of conflict. So I used to do this before I gave talks. When I was teaching software engineering class, like before I walk in, I would just find a little corner and I would do my thing. And I'd walk in much more calm. And one student said about this one, I've used it twice already. This is about a week and a half later. Before a speech and once before an exam, and it really worked. At this point, when I get comments like that, I think I can just go home. I can shut the doors and take the rest of the quarter off. We've had success. To make one student, make a difference in one student's life, that's my expectation. If I can do that, that's great. I didn't quite leave at that point. Another thing is safety language. John talks a lot about safety language. I think it's in the books. I don't know if you mentioned it, Harry, when you're in there. I don't think so. And the idea that you're working with people, you might be in conflictual situations. If the developer is really holding on to the design or somebody, a program manager, whatever, then you want to choose your language carefully when you're phrasing your comments and your bugs and stuff like that. So I was reading these reports that the students are writing, and they're all in this, like, they all have these things in them, it's like, safety language, safety language. And then I read one, and I read all the way to the bottom, I was like, wait, where was my safety language conversation with this paper? And I looked back and I was like, what's going on here? And so I want to try this out with you. Here's 2 statements. You should not have alcohol at QASIG meetings, okay? One statement. The other one, Or should you have alcohol at QASIG meetings? Okay, they're both sort of conveying the same type of information almost. But one's a statement, one's a question. And that second paper was all questions. There was nothing you should have done, this was bad, it was all question. Did you want this thing to crash after 2 minutes?
Well, you know that people like Fox News, they don't say the declarative. They raise the question as a guise for the declarative, right? That's how they got out of that. Like, should we impeach Obama? You know, something like that, right?
So we have good precedent.
It's safety, yeah.
Good. So I'm wondering, which is better in the test report?
Should you have politics?
This certainly felt better to me. And I'm wondering if this is sort of like a safety language plus plus. It's another variant, it's another way to couch
What is the safety language plus plus?
that
Everything
we
is
use
question.
statements, or a lot of things in statements.
A lot of things in statements, but not everything,
Well,
because
no, because then that's just.
you want to state your
really-
expectation. I expected, not that my expectation is correct, but I expected
Yeah,
this.
okay.
I may be crazy, but.
Yeah. Yes, my safety language to David was something like, well, it seems like, it could be, it appears as if. Basically, the subtext is, I could be wrong, but this is my impression. And then no developer can argue with that. They go, well, okay, you're wrong, but I could see how it seemed that way. So that's what I mean by safety language.
It's more appropriate at different times of the production cycle. If I'm in triage and I see a bug that comes in that says should and it's 2 weeks before ship, it gets punted just like that. So it's also appropriate in the cycle.
That's right.
And depending on what you are asking or stating, your credibility is actually on the line.
Yeah.
If you are fairly comfortable in what you believe, you should put it in as a statement. So if you're not sure, you should ask a question. Because credibility will affect you all through the cycle.
You know, I come from FDA-regulated industries, and
Thou shalt.
a bug report needs to have facts in it. If you're putting questions in, is this what it should do? It means you don't know what you're testing.
Which may be the case. So it could be that you mix these things and when there's issues, you don't quite know what you're testing. Yeah. Okay, so great, I have more context on that. Thank you. Journaling, I mentioned that before, 5 minutes at the beginning of the class, write whatever is important to you. I'm never going to look at them. So how did this come across to the students? In the beginning, I was a little leery of the journals. The exercise actually proved to be quite effective. And this person then went on to talk about how they would start writing about a homework assignment that they were trying to solve, and then it's like, oh, and they would get a solution for it. And it happened recurrently. It's like, huh. So somehow, just writing about the problem instead of trying to solve the problem, solve the problem.
Why at the beginning of class instead of the end?
Because I tried it at the end, years before, and I'd forget. You know, we're in the middle of things like, oh no, well, I'll see you tomorrow. And another reason is the feedback I got from students was that it was a meditative time. It put them into the place of the class, and it let them enter the class with a clearer mind.
Did you have preferences for writing versus typing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Physical thing. Because we all type a lot, and it uses these muscles. This uses different muscles. We have 9 different types of neurons. One of them records the different angles of our arms. So as you're writing, you're involving different types of neurons, which means you think differently. So use a different tool and see how it works. It may be that you also do it the other way. That's fine. But give this an experiment. We're in school. Let's try it out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Another one is I have also learned something I did not anticipate to learn from this class, writing journals. At first I thought it is ridiculous, but after a while I was adapting slowly. Now I don't think I will ever stop. And I didn't ask them to write about journaling. At the end I said, write about the things you've learned. And about 6 people wrote things like this about journals.
Did you ever go back to the students and show them or remind them to look at day 1, day 2, when it's like day 40? Was that
So-
part of the design? Okay.
Because it wasn't a journal about the class.
Hmm.
It was just the activity of
Oh, I
writing
see.
in a journal about whatever is important to you to write about.
Okay.
Great, Moon. So, professor, we have a problem. A few weeks into class, some students came to me and said, we got a problem. Okay, what's the problem here? Well, I noticed the first one, the energy was down, and they declared that we don't know what the grading scheme is, we are scared, the rubrics is changing, we don't have enough visibility, what's going on? And again, they also mentioned John murdered the first test report, which actually was a good and a bad thing, because he gave professional feedback. As a professional, this would be a G minus, or this would be an F. The highest grade was a C plus. And I didn't frame that well enough. And probably it's not on a curve.
Yeah.
No curve.
Shouldn't let him sign.
There's no curve.
What happened to safety language?
Oh, right, I should have.
It appears as if you got a C plus.
So they liked the professional feedback, they didn't like that it had a grade. So if we had said this was a excellent, and this was extremely unprofessional, that would have been fine. But when you put a grade down, that goes ching ching, school, ching ching, great GPA, and then your mind goes there and it's not a good place. So I also thought about this thing from brain rules, right? When you're in stress, your brain doesn't work well, and if you're under too much stress, it just doesn't work at all for the type of creative activities we're involved in. So I had a conversation with the class, we changed it to be a curve or more weight to the later grades, and some other changes, and I also asked them to now please bring back your energy and engagement. We reset. And I think it worked. Actually, how did it work?
I think that worked really well, and it was, I think, if you wouldn't have done that, you probably just would have had a class that wasn't paying attention to you anymore. So it was a good reset. I think it worked well.
Thanks. Okay, bunch of speakers. John Bott came in and talked a bunch of his enthusiasm and stuff he talked about. Harry, his perspectives, the exploratory test automation. Engen, who gave his first talk about taking his academic PhD stuff and trying to talk to a group of undergrads. Jeff Brewster and Brian Bronigan came in. Jeff is at a small organization, Green Foundation. Brian is at F5 Networks, and they came in together to talk about what it meant to manage testing projects, and that was really intriguing. And then Subodh came in and talked about QA test management, and unfortunately his time got shrunk as well because of the classes got canceled at the end. So what did it mean? I asked these people to get, and I actually passed all this by, so I think this actually represents some of the things it meant to them. So for Harry, he really wants to evangelize. Test all things, hold fast to that which is good. Thessalonians 5:31. Okay? This is a particular phrasing, by the way. I had a different phrasing, and he corrected me. He liked this phrasing better, so fine. He's an evangelist. He wants to evangelize about these things, about testing, about engineering approach to it. Great, I love that stuff. He found the students very engaging. They were willing to, he fired them 3 times in a row in one class. They remember that. They now ask questions. He fired them because they weren't asking questions.
What do you mean you fired them?
He hired them to do a project for him.
Oh.
Okay, now how many test cases do you think we'll need for this project? You have 5 minutes to decide. A few minutes go by. Okay, time's up. Like, wait, has it been 5 minutes? Nope, things changed. Now.
Yeah, man.
And then he said, so no one's asked me any questions. You're fired. But you know what? I need a bunch of testers, so I'm going to hire you all. And he fired him twice more for the same thing. Basically, they weren't asking enough questions. And the next, one of these times, I don't remember which, they asked him questions. Said, is that it? And there were more questions. Is that it? There are more questions. They went over 20, 25 minutes of questions. They got that. Really got that. Very effective. And he also likes getting them before they've formed impressions about what has to be done, so that he can persuade them that his particular religion is better than the other religion.
Amen.
The suggestions that came out of conversations with Harry about the course are consider doing a sponsored project. He mentioned how Ken Tainer does this at Florida Tech. They've done it with Microsoft, for instance.
It actually sounds similar to what you were doing with your company.
Yes, I think I could have done it. Yes, similar to that, extension of that. Have presentations where the students have you guys come, get feedback from you guys. Do a graduate level course. That's sort of scary to me. Brian, so one of the things he has, when he was trying to get ready for this, he was looking for what material out there is there about managing test projects and test groups. And he said there's a lot out there for, oh, you want to say it?
No, there's a lot out there for testers, but I couldn't find a lot about managing the actual process of testing, especially dealing with the politics of testing at the senior management level. So.
So, very intriguing. And he also, interactions with the students were good. It was really nice having this, Jeff and he were in there, and in a big organization do this. Oh, well, I do something a little quite different. And so that large, small organization thing worked out fairly well. And it was nice, they both talked about how it was nice that we got questions from the students first and fed it to them. And so then when they came in, they could then answer the students. And the students loved that. They also loved that when Harry answered the questions that they had given him. Suggestions, weave the speakers into curriculum better, tell them more, give them more context, help them fit into the whole pattern so they come in at just the right time for a particular thing. And more about what it really means to be a test manager, some foundational stuff they're not sure what that would be.
Well, the thing is that test management isn't just for test managers. That testers have to manage their time, their testing, how they're reporting, and understand the larger context of how the project is working.
Okay, so good stuff to talk about there. Jeff Brewster came in, same type of things here, and he said the list of questions provided by the class were thought-provoking and gave me reason to pause and rethink some of my assumptions.
Yeah.
So it was useful for him as well. It's like, oh, not only are the students learning, he's learning. Suggestions, more internships. The students are looking for internships. There are people who really want to be software testers. If you want to pursue internships, let me know. It's actually required there for the undergrads. They have to do a 400-hour internship that's either sponsored by a company or they can do a research project. And most of them want to do internships. So talk to me if you're interested in that. And there are people like Joe who work in a really small company. And some of the stuff we talk about is more bigger company stuff. So more about what it means to work in a small versus big. That would be useful. I think that would be useful for everyone. Engen, he came in. This is the first time he had been this academic thing, bringing it down. And so he really liked the opportunity to influence the students. He found them interested in the new topics. His big lesson and mine is that how do I take people who are new to this type of environment and help them create a thing that is targeted at the right level. This was targeted, he had lots of equations. It's fascinating stuff if you're a graduate student. These are undergrads. And we had a great talk afterwards, and it's a beautiful talk he could give on it, and I'm hoping he'll give it again. Because there's such interesting concepts. So that was a conversation for me as well, that I've got to do a better job creating the safety for the speakers who come in. So in general, they love the enthusiasm, inspiring the students, they love the perspective, the examples that come in, the different ways of thinking. Harry asked, how many books have people read on software testing in here? Lots? Few? So he's done some informal polling of it, and what he told the students was that the average when he's asked testers is less than one. And he told me about this one senior SDET who he's working with, and who didn't know about equivalence classes. And the SDET said to Harry, how could it be that I'm a senior SDET and I don't know about equivalence classes?
I fired her. I didn't fire her.
So the awkwardness of stuff I already talked about is making sure that the presentations work well. So again, here John, he came in and said, okay, I'm going to give you 10 minutes of what it looks like testing for someone like me to test this program. And then he just opened his mouth and he started moving his fingers in the mouse. And students started trying to write, but pretty quickly stopped and just watched. And seeing that, the energy, the zillion different approaches and ideas was very eye-opening for them. This is not about sitting in front of a screen and pushing buttons, not what John was showing. Oh, and they also did a talk on complexity, how to deal with complexity. They really liked that. So the books are great. I really like the pair. I think they worked out really well. I'm looking forward to seeing what the next version of this looks like. This worked out really well. In the future, I'd like to better integrate the readings. So here's a scenario. Now, what you just read, what would you use and why for that scenario? And then get some discussions with the students in there. And a few more to go here. So portfolios, this one was fascinating. This again, a couple weeks ago, actually about a month ago, one of the students said, oh, she's been interviewing at all these places, and every single one of them asked them the following question. Do you have a portfolio? So for her, this was good, because she did have some of a portfolio. And it reaffirmed the stuff I had heard about. In some places, they look for that. Using the blog for a portfolio, a few students did that. Joe is one. And I gave a talk on the KNEV framework, which is absolutely... Has anyone here heard of the KNEV framework? I'd love to come back here and talk about it. It's so... That's the thing I've talked to probably 40 people about. It's so intriguing. It's so interesting.
For the chat stream, it's KNEVIN, KNEVin?
C.
Sorry, I don't remember
We'll see.
the... Oh, there it is.
C-Y-N-E-F-I-N.
C-Y-N-E-F-I.
It's Welsh, and it stands for the multiple places that you come from that make up who you are, something like that. And it's just an absolutely fascinating framework and sense-making set of tools for organizations. So I talked about it briefly in class. Joe then went back to his company, and he then used it to solve a couple of problems that have been plaguing them for a while. And so the next week, he came in and told us about it. The next week. So then he blogged about this on his blog, his blog. The KNEV what, and blah, blah, blah. And, oops, sorry, backwards. Let's see if I can do this. Excuse me here.
Got several layers.
One moment now. Okay, so David Snowden, within 24 hours, found the blog, the guy who created the KNEV framework, and blogged about it. Said, let's see, it's good to know, come across this blog post and use some KNEV in software testing, First, it's good to know the model is being used. Even better to see a student pick up the essence despite only a couple of minutes of teaching. Posted a nice set of illustrations, blah, 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 and so on. And suddenly, Joe had 625 blog hits on his blog. Very little.
Well done.
Fame. So my student was getting famous. It's like, this is the best thing that can happen.
And he's been added to Snowden's RSS feed.
Yes.
That's something.
And Brett Petticore has seen this, so he's going to look at the KNEV framework now. I mean,
So has he been invited to speak at Star West yet?
Yeah.
So, lightning talks, 4 minutes each, how did these go?
Yes, yeah.
Students said, several of them said something like this: I found the talks much more interesting than I expected. I thought it was going to be boring, apparently. And it wasn't boring. 4 minutes is too short to do really analysis. It's like storytelling, a lot of assumptions, so some people wanted longer. 4 minutes because I could fit them all into 2 hours. 5 minutes wouldn't work. That'd be 2 class sessions. This is where, at the end of this, we're doing the lightning talk. Joe said, Professor, can I have 2 minutes? Professor, can I have 2 minutes? Like, sure. And then he got up and told that story about using the KNEV framework. He was like, I went home that day. I was so happy. So one thing is they would actually like to see the papers each of the students have written. I wanted to see more. She was talking about a really cool thing, and he did a neat thing. And so next time, put them somewhere where they can all see them. So there's a lot of things I've talked about what it's meant to students. Here are a few other things. Understanding how to actually test better. The inspirational stuff, about other people that actually want to be testers. So it was good for them to find a grounding. Some more suggestions that came from the students is provide an overview of all general testing practices. I went into exploratory pretty much only, and exploratory test automation. Read more blogs, and this one's obvious. So what did it mean for me? Well, after reading James Bach's book, John's brother's book on the Secrets of a Buccaneer Scholar, on all these beautiful distinctions he lays out there. One of them is expectations versus aspirations. Does anybody here know about this? Okay, so expectations, if you don't meet your expectations, you're not happy. If you surpass your aspirations, you're bored. So the space between these two things is the happy spot. And a lot of people sort of put them right next to each other, which means it's really hard to be happy, because you have to be between these two. So make sure there's a reasonable space between above your expectations and below your aspirations, so you can live there and be happy. So my expectations when I teach is I open students' eyes, did that, great. That some students start acting differently, seeing differently, great, did that. That some students are more effective. Joe is an example. A couple other stories from other students about they're more effective in the job. Even people who aren't testing are more effective in the job. Good. They know testing better. They know it better. Are they perfect? No. Are they experts? No. But they know it a lot better. Great. The aspiration side, would I teach it again? At 3 weeks, like, no way. 3 weeks in the quarter, no way I'm going to teach this again. Halfway through, Near the end, maybe. By the time I talk to Harry, he's like, yeah, I'll teach this again. Research, distinguishing UW Bothell, building something bigger, I don't know, but I really would like to focus on building something bigger. How can we all build something that's more than just this course, that's more than just a set of students over there, that has lots of interactions and integration with industry to make a rich thing for everybody and a useful thing for everybody? What does that mean? I don't know yet. And as this has just involved more people like you in designing these courses and designing this something bigger. So next time, this is Ross slide. Here's what I currently think would look like next time. So required introductory programming. So we can do that. Have a 2-week overview. This is the type of things that you might meet out there under the guise of testing. Focus on exploratory test automation, which includes all the exploratory stuff, but it's got programming in it. This is the engineering attitude toward testing. And then practice, 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 practice. So have a sponsored industrial product here, so you can get that interaction with people who are actually fixing the bugs and pushing back on your assertions and saying, hey, you gotta use some safety language here or things like that. And also have these public presentations at the end where you guys can come and say, you know, nice idea, have you looked at this? And they will love that. They so value the interactions with people in industry. They believe them. They believe you guys much more than they believe professors, for good reasons. And here's a final quote from the students. As professionals, we should all learn about testing to some extent. Testing is essential. We all test our limits, others' limits and boundaries. We test our bodies, what we can handle and what we can't handle. Testing is part of our life, and becoming aware of it helps us do it better. It was great to see that. So given this, I would love to have a conversation with whoever here is interested about how to make this something bigger. How can we have maybe more than one course? How can we have sets of internships? How can we have, what other things make sense? What are the things that you need from these types of people that we might be able to help with? I don't know where it'll go, but I probably will be teaching this again next year. I'll find out in the next few weeks. And we should see where this goes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm monitoring the chat room. There's no active questions. We have 11 viewers on the stream, but I want to take 10 minutes or so for questions, if anybody has any for David. Any questions, any suggestions, anything like that? Yes, Liz?
Just a side comment. When I went back to my advisor in college after 2 years of testing, my CS professor, and I said, why didn't I learn anything about testing in college? And he said, oh, it's not, an academic course. That's just...
If you look at the academic journals on testing, there's a lot in there that's very control-oriented, precision-oriented. I don't see much on the exploratory stuff. And yet, it so connects to all of the liberal studies type stuff.
Philosophy department.
Yeah.
That's
So there's
where
strong
it's
connections into academia, but the way that we have evolved, at least in this country, is not to pursue those things. And I think it'd be fascinating to help shift that. Something I forgot to mention is I looked to see if there had been courses taught in software testing at University of Washington or in Washington State. And certainly at University of Washington, there was one taught some years ago in Tacoma, like 10, 12 years ago. I heard tonight that there might have been one taught at Bothell about 10 years ago, but I couldn't see any record of that. There's an experimental college offering at University of Washington, Seattle, and Bellevue Community College has a
Yeah.
whole set.
Yeah.
The UW extension,
UW Extension.
yeah. Not the-
UW Extension
UW
has a.
Not
Yeah,
the
that's-
experimental college. That's a different thing.
Is it the same thing?
Tom,
No.
Tom Gilchrist, I think
You can learn yoga at the experimental college,
Do I- am I doing
but you don't get a
something
certificate in it.
Might help.
Okay, the extension. So there's room to grow, and I love to do some of that.
Someone in the chat room said, why not model it after Bellevue College or UW's test certs? Or you just didn't know they existed before, or?
Because I'm not that type of character.
Okay.
I was gonna say, why
Now-
restricted to what's been taught at Washington as opposed to what's been taught across the country?
Hmm.
Because there are
Oh,
software testing courses across the country.
And I did look at some of the other stuff from like Kem Kaner's group. And I think back then it was just hard for me to really grapple with it all. And so I did my tendency, which is I designed something from scratch. I'm not saying that was a smart thing to do or the best thing to do, it's what I did. So yes, at this point I think looking at some of those others would be very good. And I resonate with some of the stuff of Kem Kaner. The stuff I've looked at the Bellevue Community College so far, it doesn't resonate as much with me.
Not surprising.
Good.
So,
Anything else?
given that it was sold as a bit of a seminar in the beginning, perhaps some of your students thought it was in line with what they wanted to know, but also an easy grade. Do you think that after the class they would go back to their peers and say, harder than I thought, but you should take this class?
Joe, what do you think?
I think so, yeah. I mean, especially because, yeah, it was awesome class. I would recommend it.
As long as I change a few things.
It was hairy at the beginning, but it worked out. No, sorry.
It's very
You're fired.
You'll hire me back.
So I guess some of them look right.
And a second part of that question would be, did they really, the students, did you get a feel that they wanted to explore other types of testing based on what they learned about exploratory testing?
Why don't you speak?
Yeah, in fact, so for our research projects, I think, gosh, half the class or maybe more wanted to know more about like test automation
Yep.
and those kinds of things. So, but that was actually a good way to learn about that stuff. So I think it still worked out okay.
So I think if we did this type of thing where there's like automation here, that would have 2/3 of the students decide to use that for the research project. So there's clearly a lot of interest in that. And if we fulfill that, I think that'd be good.
Sounds like you have a lot of STETs in training.
That's a known career path.
Actually,
Yeah,
I believe one of your traps that you might fall into is that automation itself is not a simple subject. There are many kinds of automation,
Yeah.
some more effective at learning what testing is about versus more esoteric stuff. So I think that if you do take this approach, make sure that automation is clearly understood to not be one big thing, but very small little things to build up a group.
Right, exactly, which is why I like the idea of this
Interesting.
exploratory test, because these are
Very
small little, they
consistent.
can be very small little scripts that you use, very small little programs. And yes, there's a wide range. Yes.
So what's the length next time? Is it again 12 weeks or?
It's 10 weeks total, it's stretched to over 12 last time.
You have at least 3 more sessions, the one you skipped, 2 for snow.
And then Thanksgiving, yeah, so there'll be some more sessions.
20 sessions each 2 hours.
That's so much time.
All right. Question from the chat room. Can I squeeze one in before? Okay. What's your take on the course as a once and possibly future consumer of testing services? Change your perception at all?
once a future consumer of testing services. I'm not quite sure how to.
As in,
Anybody?
what you learned about testing while teaching it, what
Yes.
does that tell you about testing?
Looking back on your time at Depiction,
Sure.
where you consumed testing services.
Have
Now
you
look
done
at that
testing in the
difference.
past? How have you done testing in the past?
Well, when I was at Depiction, I actually hired somebody to do this, and it didn't work out. It got pulled down into lots of other ways of testing. We didn't really get to this, which was a shame. But I really think this is a strong approach, because it really is. I've also worked at other organizations where they have 200 to 300 testers and 10,000 manual test cases. I don't think that's an effective way to be able to navigate through the complexities of building software systems and testing them. It builds a lot of burden into it. I think you need some of that stuff, but I think this is extremely powerful. There's a great story that Harry told me after one of these things, article in 2005 or 2008, where there's a guy who is in the Ultima Online. And so this is the analogy I think of. Ultima Online is massively multiplayer online game, and you play the game and you earn gold. And after you get a bunch of gold, you can buy a bigger sword or more beautiful armor or something like that. So now there's a currency system that is connected to your real money systems, where you can go and pay somebody who's earned all this gold some money and some dollars, and they'll give you the gold. In fact, they started companies in India where people or other places where the wages were lower to play the game to accumulate the gold to start these companies. This guy looked at it and said, I can write a bot that would do that. So he spent some months in his spare time writing bots to play the game to accumulate gold, and eventually got well enough, he went out and bought 30 computers, stuck them into his closet. There's a picture in the IEEE Spectrum article about this. Just cheap computers, and he had a bot run on each, and it was making $80 an hour, US dollars, 30, so $2,400 an hour with these bots, and they're probably running 24 hours a day. At which point he thought, I can quit my job, and he did. And then he left this occupation when he started getting threats from some sort of underground element. So what's happening here? I mean, the people who are running Ultima Online, they don't want bots gaming the system like this, probably. So they're evolving the system, their immune system, to get rid of the bots. He's evolving the bots. So there's this predator and there's a prey, and they're both getting stronger and better. So that's how I view this. If, as an engineer, how can you create a predator-prey relationship where the prey, which is the thing you want to sell to people, is getting stronger and stronger, fitter and fitter, because you are engineering the prey to attack it and find the problems.
If you think for a minute about that as an analogy, that means that the developers making Ultima Online are spending more and more of their effort instead of making a better game and protecting it.
Or maybe it makes a better game.
So
because maybe
doesn't that maybe suggest that?
It's an analogy.
Right, but doesn't that maybe suggest that if you concentrate on exploratory automation, you get very good at protecting yourself from bugs that are readily found by exploratory automation, but some bugs aren't readily found that way.
Like what type?
Bugs. Well, it depends on the application.
So I think no tool is the only tool to use. This will find a lot of bugs. They won't find usability bugs, perhaps. They maybe not. It depends on how you engineer these things. They won't find color mismatch bugs, probably, unless you didn't. So there's a lot of things that you need humans in. And that's part of what this is what can we automate well, and what do we need humans for? And make rational decisions about those things based upon what we actually could do, instead of saying, well, we can automate a huge quality center system of 10,000 bugs. Well, you can engineer that, but the cost to the agility in the system is enormous. So and humans as being the automation thing is a very inefficient way. So that's not a good use of humans. It's not really good use of computers. Make good use of the computers and make good use of the humans. That's how I think of it. I think that might answer some of what they were asking about flying.
And that sounds like your graduate seminar.
Okay, a few more minutes for questions.
Yes, Harry.
So the analogy would be that exploratory test automation is to manual exploratory testing as this guy's bots were to people actually playing the game. And the problem was that those bots were pissing off the people who were playing the game because the bots could find much more gold.
It's true.
So the issue here would be that you might be annoying the manual exploratory testers who weren't finding as many bugs. But in fact, what really ends up happening is the manual people find different kinds of bugs.
Yeah.
And that automation frees them up to find those.
Right, and that's why there's always this exploratory part in here, not just automated.
I'm not arguing against exploratory testing.
You're
So the course is about software testing. Did you talk about software testing in relation to quality assurance? I know people use the term interchangeably. I think it's different, but did you address that?
A little bit.
A little bit at the beginning, but I mean, I think
You said the same thing. It's good.
talking about software testing. I'm not sure.
The thing I remember saying is something about you can't assure quality by testing. You can find things by testing, but that doesn't assure quality. And so I think the name quality assurance is, that's what, don't engineers try to assure quality? Don't program managers try to assure quality? Everybody's trying to assure quality. So for some organizations to say that they assure quality seems like a very a very odd interpretation to me. It's like, what can I do? I can change what I do, and I can change my environment, but I can't change what you guys do. So to assure quality is sort of like saying, I can assure that you will do things the right way.
That's actually what some QA departments do.
Well, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah,
but that's my
actually,
That's not my view of quality
depends on
assurance.
your environment,
Yeah.
context.
Quality assurance
That's my thing.
quality assurance are the people are focused on trying to encourage everyone to take quality into account all the way through the process.
Fine. If that's what they're
Doesn't
doing.
assure anything.
A lot of places have heard that label used in very different contexts.
Right.
I think that's part of the key problem is that the two labels have been used interchangeably
Right, for too
with
long.
different definitions for too long, and then also with the same definition.
And even so, you can't assure quality. So why I say quality assurance? Quality coaching? Okay, I can see that one.
I like assistance. I still use QA, it's just, I just say
Quality
assistance, because I assist with notions of what quality might be given context, so.
That makes sense.
The best I can do.
Right.
I was kind of curious about, did you talk about requirements at all and how to actually test requirements? And that's really big in my field, but not just requirements-based testing, but the earlier you test and find bugs, the cheaper and easier it is to fix them. So I look for bugs in the requirements first, and because it's easier to fix it there than after it's been coded up and sent out the door. So I think there's in my experience, I see a lot of inexperience in writing good requirements and in analyzing requirements. And if you have bad requirements to begin with, you're probably going to have bad software.
I talked about it a little bit in the beginning.
Didn't we read something about that, or maybe I did on my
It's
own research?
probably in.
If you read
Testing
BJ
for software.
Robinson's blog, you probably mentioned it once or
I think it's
twice
in
or
the-
50 times.
But I do remember the concept of, hey, you can test software before there's a line of code
That's right.
written.
Right.
Yeah, that's part of the first day. What is software? What do you have a requirement spec? Is that software? Well, in a way it is. You can think of how movies
But
are
I
made. They start
don't
with a
think you can
storyboard.
test without requirements.
You can start. No.
Oh, you can all
time.
So I have a business I propose,
Maybe you
and I propose a business plan to you, and you
You
all
are
go, that's
blindly
stupid.
you're blindly doing something, but you're not really. You have to have some focus.
Well,
Not
you
focus.
have
Yes, I agree. You need focus. Is a business plan focus?
Yes.
Is there requirements in the business plan? Some.
Yeah.
Can it be really quite? Is it what we think of as software requirements in the business plan?
Yeah, you have
He's
to have
sort of
requirements.
shaking his head.
You have somewhere between 20 and 70 years of
No.
human experience.
Well, that's right. Requirements are in your head. You can have unofficial, implicit requirements. So, like you can use some product like this before. That's requirements. It doesn't have to be formally written down and spec'd out. But Selv is right. I mean, you have to have a notion of what you think it's supposed to do,
Right.
and those are requirements. I think that's what you're
That's fair
saying,
enough. Yeah,
because
yeah,
I've
that's
seen you
right.
test without requirements, so I know you can do it.
Well, I don't know, my first several test jobs, we had no
I
requirements
mean,
at all.
if it blue screens or guru meditations or whatever, you may not have had a requirement about that, but you know that's wrong.
We used to find out what our requirements are by talking to the developers. How is it supposed to work?
Yeah.
So yes, you do need requirements, but they're not
I
always
think the
formal.
book I read, lesson learned, software lesson learned.
Sorry, what?
Software lesson learned, the book, that
Yes.
one of the book, it's talk about like infer, one of the important thing about to ask, to infer the requirement is just very not enough to test. So infer the fact from previous product or whatever, like that's important thing if you want to test that kind of.
Common expectation.
Yeah, so that's, I totally agree with that. Actually, I have another question. I'm working on Chrome browser. I'm from Google. And I'm wondering, instead of sponsored industrial program, how about open source software like Chrome or WebKit, that kind of thing? That you will get more wider feedback if you test and find a bug. The reward will be bigger. Of course, you can, somebody can come and talk about it. It doesn't have to be
Sure. So
sponsored industry.
So is your question, what about using open source software in class?
Instead of,
Okay,
Yeah.
instead of the sponsored industrial.
got it,
It's
okay.
pretty good, yeah. You don't have to.
that could work as well, as long as there's a robust community that I can interact with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if there is a local company that wants to sponsor, there's some advantages. One, they might actually have real physical people come in and talk with the students. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Another one is they might actually want to sort of get a first glance at the students and say, oh, this guy is really interesting. And now you
But-
sort of have informal internship.
But advantage of that is you can have several projects. For example, you have pick up several open software.
Yes.
And they are assigned to each group. And then you can, because I'm worried like if you use one, the copycat, like copy the, I teach class and then they start copying.
It was
right?
great because I would give them this product to test, and there's lots of bugs in it.
Yeah.
And they would find some bugs, and each person, 23 people, finding bugs. And then they come to class and they see all the bugs everyone found. It's like, whoa, never thought of looking there, never thought of looking there, never thought of looking there.
Yeah,
So what
only
did you
23, yes, but if you teach 100 students,
I don't do that at all.
I mean, scalability. is
That's a different
important.
problem.
The largest-
You're now in a different problem space.
Yeah.
Even then, I bet there would be.
I always have to think about scalability. That's my.
The largest classroom in Buffalo is 90, and there's one of those.
Oh, okay.
Up next to that is 48. So,
Yeah.
yes, there would be scalability issues, but even then, I'm not sure if it's a possibility. Yes, you could go that way.
I'm interested in that. So.
I like the idea of forming relationships with corporations here because part of our goal, my view, is not just to educate people, but to find them a place in what they're doing after they leave the school. So if this can help them find jobs, that's good. So in that sense, I have a preference toward creating industrial relationships, but open source could work well.
Okay. All right, well, I sense a little bit of energy in the room, but I understand these chairs are comfortable, so let me dismiss everybody. If you're free to hang around till 9, I'll be here till 9 or 9:30. So, we do. Joe, can you draw
Buckets in front.
do we have a door prize? I totally forgot about our door prize.
Traditionally, the speaker does the drawing, so go ahead.
Do we have a thing?
If they do this, yeah, we have those.
I'll do it.
Yeah, we have those.
Oh, good.
We have them,
Thank you for taking care of that. I totally forgot. Okay, Joe draws.
And we have Joe Germani.
That's me.
Oh,
It's about time, Joe.
All right.
Yeah, that's like the first time. So thank you all very much.
Yep.
Thank you for your attention, thank you for coming, thank you for your questions, and I look forward to future interactions and make this thing something bigger, whatever that.
Yeah, and then depending on your schedule, David, Zoka's right down the street. We can leave this open as long as we want.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to hang out. And Graham's right down in the village.
Is there
Okay.
contact info for you if we have something that we want to pass on?
Yeah.
You want
Not
to
necessarily tonight?
Yeah.
There's business cards here, and you can also, if you search for my name, you Google it, and UW Bothell, you'll
Yeah,
find
and
me.
we'll post the slides with your permission on QASIG.org as well as the recording of the Ustream broadcast. So, okay, good? Okay, very good. All right, thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. And thank you on the chat. Everybody on Ustream, thanks for being here. The two bands, and Adam and Jim, thanks everybody. I'm going to stop the recording.